Us tonight. President Bola Tinubu has signed the Student Loans Bill into law. The bill passed by the National Assembly and transmitted for the President's assent is the Access to Higher Education Act and the 2024 Repeal and Re-Enactment Bill. This is after separate considerations by both the Senate and the House of Representatives Committee on Tertiary Institutions and TETFund. President Tinubu says with this new law, no Nigerian, regardless of their background, will be excluded from obtaining quality education. TVC News State House correspondent Femi Akonde reports.
We have just signed a bill proclaiming the student loan effectively. First of all, I must thank the members of the National Assembly for their expeditious handling of this bill, considering the children of Nigeria, that education is the tool to fight against poverty effectively. We are determined to ensure education is given the proper attention necessary for the country, including skill development programs. This is to ensure that no one, no matter how poor their background is excluded from quality education and opportunity to build their future.
For more perspective on the student loan law, and educationist Dr. Peter Ogudoro joins me on the news. Thank you for joining us on TVC News at 7. Now the President has signed the amended bill into law. What is the high point of this document for you, and how would it impact the education sector in Nigeria?
Well, I have always been an advocate of democratization of access to higher education. And so what I am glad about this development is the fact that it's going to make it possible for every Nigerian child who has intellectual capacity to benefit from higher education to actually access it. And I commend the President for moving in this direction. I campaigned against the original law because it put a lot of barriers against children of the ordinary people in the street. But with amendment, I can see that most of those barriers have been removed. It doesn't necessarily mean that we have got to where we're going to, because at the end of the day, if we really want Nigeria to develop wings to fly in terms of national development, we must progress eventually to a point where every Nigerian child doesn't have to pay for education. Government should show that responsibility. But given our current economic realities, I think that this is a significant step forward.
And the launch of this document was actually stalled a number of times, and the most recent reason given for it was that there was need to actually have all stakeholders fully aligned before the formal flag off by Mr. President. Would you say that has happened now? How have educationists keyed into this scheme, and how are they supporting the government to see that it's really a success?
Well, a major stakeholder in the higher education subsector would be the university lecturers who run the classrooms. And I think that much as they would not, clap their hands for every aspect of it, I think that they will consider this a significant improvement on how we get money to run the system. Because if every child who has the capacity to benefit from higher education is enabled through this students' loan scheme to come into the university and study and pay only after they have graduated and probably have also got job, then you will see that there's no reason why most of the stakeholders who are very conversant with Nigeria's economic realities can continue to campaign against the students' loan scheme. So, and some of us who are not within the regular academia, we are also campaigners for this improvement, and I can see that this government has demonstrated a listening ear, and I recommend that they take this approach to every other thing they want to do for our country going forward. No, segment of society, including those in parliament or those in executive, should get to a point where they think that they have become so omniscient that they don't listen to the people they are representing when they are making laws and formulating public policies.
Well, this scheme now is to serve students in different institutions, whether it's federal government-owned or state government-owned, or even vocational institutions. But you mentioned earlier that we are not yet where we ought to be. Where is that destination?
That destination is the place that will take us to where some of our peers in the world are. In Saudi Arabia, every child who has the capacity to benefit from good quality education has access to it and doesn't have to pay for it, from kindergarten to up to PhD. In Finland, in virtually every country in the Scandinavian region, Norway, Denmark, Sweden, Iceland, every child has access to higher education and can study up to PhD and get all the benefits that education provides. That is where we should be going to. And of course, if you visit the countries where education has been made easily accessible and removing all the barriers that expensive education can put in the way of a child, go and look at those countries and you see that indeed education has become the bedrock of their development. They are flying very high. They are doing well in technology. They are doing well economically. Even their politics has improved significantly. And when every child realizes that they do not really have to kowtow to politicians to get money to pay their school fees, that they can borrow money on their own merit once they fulfill the minimum conditions to be able to go to school, you discover that it becomes very difficult for politicians to continue to use them as tools for actualization of their political ambitions. One of the reasons why we have continued to suffer in terms of pervasive corruption and thuggery during elections is the fact that most youths in our country are not able to do basic things, put food on the table for themselves and maybe their families if they have such responsibilities, and go to school, without having to run to politicians to get stipends to be able to do those kinds of things. So this kind of arrangement makes it very possible for children from disadvantaged backgrounds to go as far as their brains can carry them. And I think that is something we should all be happy about. But as I have already said, ultimately, we should get to a point where government shoulders responsibility for educating every Nigerian child. But it's because it is a very good thing for society. A society where everybody is literate, a society where everybody has his intellectual capacity fully developed. It's a society that is very easy to govern. And those kinds of people are not very easy to manipulate. Absolutely.
Dr. Peter Agudoro is an educationist. Thank you very much for talking to us on TVC News at 7.
It's been my pleasure.